This is going to be a new series on how to play against each and every Guild Wars 2 class, because the most important things to know when trying to get better at Guild Wars 2 PvP is not only how your class and skills work, but how they work in relation to the other classes you will be interacting with. Guild Wars 2 is a very visual, action-oriented game, and much of the information you are given on screen can be fast and indistinguishable. If you don't know what an animation represents, or you don't know what animations you should avoid, you'll end up losing. Because it is extremely difficult to make a guide that is specific enough to give meaningful tips on matchups, but is general enough to not become irrelevant when the meta changes, I will be covering all of the core mechanics of each class, a few archetypes, some skill animations or trait synergies you need to play around, and general tips to countering the class. Also, because it gets extremely complicated in larger scale fights and in countering team compositions, I'll be keeping this to as simple as possible, 1v1s or small scale fights. So you won't be learning how to counter Zergs here basically. What I will be showing is how classes survive so that you can break through their defenses and get the kill on them, and also how they deal damage so you can survive their attacks. Some general tips for every matchup are that it's very important to gauge which heal skill the enemy is using. Heal skills usually give off a blue light, and knowing the cooldowns and animations of every heal skill can be a great advantage, because interrupting their heal skill can allow you to push that kill window while their heal skill's on the 4-second interrupt cooldown. And even if they do get to use it again in 4 seconds, they will need to play very passively to survive and will not be able to pressure you. However, don't get too caught up in reacting to what the enemy can or might do, because you need to play aggressively at some point. And if you get caught up thinking of all the possibilities, you'll end up just doing nothing. It's better to be confident and spam than to be thoughtful and hesitant. But it's also better than both of those to be thoughtful and confident. So practice your build and get to know your class to the point where you play it instinctively, so that you don't need to spend as much mental energy on that and have plenty of free time to think about the matchup, which is the real interaction. And of course, my greatest suggestion to learning how to play against a class is to play it yourself. Getting a feel for their cooldowns will help you to predict how they will act, and because of that, I'll be showing a lot of gameplay from the perspective of an ally. Many Elementalist builds heal from the Signet of Restoration, which gives them a lot of sustain the more skills they use, and becomes an issue to deal with in extended fights because you can't really play around it. But if you have burst damage that threatens to kill them in a short amount of time, they won't be able to get the raw healing that they need in time. If you feel like you are running out of cooldowns versus an Ellie that you can see this Signet buff on their buff bar, then you should probably disengage and help your team first, and then once you've won their fights, they can help you win yours, because that Ellie is not going to be running out anytime soon. Elementalists in general have a lot of gradual condition cleanses if they build for them, but unlike a lot of other classes, they can't get off too many conditions at once, making builds that not only deal a lot of conditions, but a wide spread of them hard to handle for Elementalists. The hardest for them to handle are Confusion and Chill, because Confusion does damage the more skills they use, which is what they want to do if they're running Signet of Restoration, so it counters that pretty hard and makes them have to change their skill priority drastically. Chill not only makes them move slower, which is integral to an Elementalist survival, but it will also put their skills and attunement swapping on longer cooldowns. Because Ellies are such a rotationally based class, their skill flow will be heavily disrupted and they won't have access to all their skills, making them much more vulnerable. But that doesn't mean that only condition builds can beat Elementalists. Power builds have a pretty good advantage if they are bursty enough as well. Usually, power builds will want to wait out the barrier of a Weaver build and then go in for the damage. There is a trait that procs a barrier stance whenever they go below 50% HP, and there is also a utility that gives that same effect. So whenever you see a Weaver has a decent amount of barrier on them, it means that that has basically procced. And you don't want to be wasting all of your burst into that barrier. You just want to wait it out because it is a long cooldown and you want to save your damage for right after that. Also, most Weavers will be running the Arcane trait line, which means they get protection whenever they go into Earth Attunement. So you don't want to be trying to do damage after they go Earth. You also kind of don't want to be doing damage while they're in air because they have a lot of weakness and ways to counter power in air as well. And then water and fire are generally their most vulnerable attunements. So you want to be attacking an Ellie when they're in water or fire attunement. And in general, how the attunements work is fire attunement does damage, so you want to be avoiding them while they're in fire attunement, or counter pressuring because they don't have any defenses in fire usually. Air is a little bit more defensive and utility while also being aggressive, so air is probably one of their most powerful attunements. Then you have water, which you don't want to blow all of your damage before they go into water. You want to do it after they go into water so they don't heal it up. And then earth is more about protection and avoidance, so you generally don't want to be spamming all your damage when they're in protection. Another thing that's really good versus Ellies is daze or stuns. And yes, those are good versus all classes, but they're especially good versus Ellies because they have limited stun breaks. Most Ellies will take Lightning Flash, which will port them, but it is not a stun break. If they are Weavers, they can take Twist of Fate, and it helps them to survive Focus, but it has a very long cooldown of 75 seconds per charge. So if you have seen them use it twice because it has 2 charges, they probably don't have any stun breaks left. Tempests have stun breaks built into their attunement overloads, but they can only use them 5 seconds after they swap attunements. This means that if you see a Tempest swap attunement, then that's your 5-second window to CC them. Core Ellie stun breaks are the Signet of Air, and while it is low cooldown, it is low impact, and Armor of Earth, which is a pretty good stun break with stability and protection, but it's also a long cooldown. Ellies suffer the most during heavy condition burst or against lockdowns. For this reason, Mesmers that can interrupt and give out confusion and burst damage are very scary to Ellies, but also Necromancers, which can chill and do massive damage, are also pretty good. Warriors and Thieves can lock down and burst Ellies, but in 1v1 situations they can be kited so they're not as effective. Ellies do have an advantage against Guardians because they have more sustain and don't really care about the Aegis that really makes Guardians very strong. And Ellies are very, very good versus Rangers because most Ellies use the Focus, which is a hard counter to projectiles. Now let's talk about the ways to avoid Ellies damage. Ellies have the most amount of weapon skills, but the least amount of weapon diversity. So learning their animations isn't too hard. Starting with the more tanky and straightforward weapon, Dagger Ellies have a lot of evades and ways to CC you. While in air attunement, you want to not be near them, especially while Shocking Aura is up, or you'll get stunned, and that'll lead into other combos. Their big damage skill is the Flame Burst, which is their leap skill in fire attunement. They can also trait in Lightning Rod, which will make all of their CCs do damage and weakness. If you start seeing a lot of weakness, it means you need to avoid the CCs better or use stability. Focus is also a very dangerous weapon, even though it is mainly utility, because it has the Gale skill and air attunement. This is a ranged 3-second unblockable knockdown, by far the strongest single target CC in the game. You don't want to be blowing your last stun break before this lands, or you'll be dead. There's also the sword playstyle, which is mainly condition based, but for the most part, this build's damage comes from gradual burns and staying on top of the target. Their most dangerous skill, however, is the Pyro Vortex, which stacks tons of burns in a small area. They can usually only land this into a big CC because you can easily walk out of it. So as I said, don't waste your last stun break. The other archetype that you'll want to watch out for is Fresh Air Scepter Ellies. They get most of their damage from range and have lots of instant cast damage, but usually they will combo a lot of this damage on top of each other to stack all the buffs from the Fresh Air trait on top of each other, because if they try to make all of their skills stack on top of each other, it's more bursty and it's less counterplayable. So generally what you'll see is Ellies will, when they're using the Fresh Air trait, they'll try to stack all their damage into that trait duration. So if you see they're starting a quick burst, you want to dodge that. But if you already tanked the burst because you didn't see it coming, you don't want to panic. You'll wait another like 3 to 4 seconds for them to leave Air Attunement, and then once they leave Air Attunement and they crit, then their Air Attunement will come off cooldown and they can do their next burst. So they're going to try to set that up. So essentially, don't panic and waste dodges because you see a lot of damage. It's only in burst. They're not going to follow up with another burst immediately. So wait until they swap out of Air Attunement, and then they start casting another combo where they will swap back into Air Attunement, and then you can use your cooldowns to avoid that. So in this situation, we're heavily outnumbered because we have a DC and we have 1 dead already. Ellies do not survive very well being focused, and because of that I start to disengage. Now the mistake they make here is they don't invest in the kill enough, because Ellies survive based on mobility, and so they're going to kite very often, and if you don't have immobilize, cripples, chills to stick on them, then they're just going to get away. And because of that, they don't get the kill on me, and they kind of just stand on node here, which is a big mistake. They really need to kind of chase, but they don't really need to do that because they own the node. But if they wanted to get the kill, then for sure they would want to. And because they don't chase me though, they start to kind of lose this fight, and I'm now playing aggressively, but we're still a little bit outnumbered, and in an outnumbered situation, you usually want to focus anything but the Ellie, because the Ellie can't really support its allies too much. So they do that, and that's gonna get them a kill on my ranger, and now I am by myself. So this is very dangerous because they can start focusing me now, and I notice that and I start kiting, but I have a lot of people still on me, and even though I am kiting around terrain, they are chasing me, and my stone resonance procs. So at this point they should really be aggressive on me, because once the Ellie's stone resonance is gone, they're pretty much a free kill. You know, once they have no stun breaks and no stone resonance passive at 50% HP, but only the necromancer chases me, so they make a huge mistake of under-investing in the kill. Against Ellies, you kind of need to just go all in. It's not like you invest a little bit here and there, because Ellies really love those small scale situations where they can get value out of using every single skill they have. So really they made a mistake there, and I survived because of that. So if you like this kind of video, give it a like and subscribe for more. I will be creating matchup videos for every class, so stay tuned for that, and check out the playlist below to see them.